Hey guys, it's Paul here from ImpulsiveCulinarian.com, and in this video, I want to tell you about my roasted potatoes recipe. Yeah! Well, there's certainly enough ways to eat potatoes. You could probably have potatoes every day for the entire year and never have the same kind of potato twice. However, on special occasions or even having a backyard barbecue and everything in between, it's really nice to have a go-to roasted potato recipe that comes out great no matter what the occasion. Nobody ever gets tired of roasted potatoes. They're a great side or filler for a menu that is extravagant or elaborate, or they can be a main for a small dinner for the family. So what I'm going to show you is a very simple recipe, guys. Anybody can do this. It's all in the spice mixture. All right, so here's what you're going to need for my roasted potatoes recipe. A batch of 8 medium-sized potatoes. I prefer to use the Yukon Gold, yellow potatoes. You can use anything you want. Russet, small, large, red, or otherwise, whatever your favorite type. 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. 1 tablespoon of kosher salt, or some big sea salt would be good. 1 tablespoon of sugar, whatever sugar you like. We use golden cane sugar, the organic variety. But you can tolerate white refined sugar, go right ahead. 1 tablespoon of Cajun Spice, not the spiciest type that you can find, but just a mild version of Cajun Spice. 2 teaspoons of onion powder and 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. Roasted potato time! Go! You see that? You see that kick? Right? This is not bad, eh? Look at that. Whoa! I feel like Riker from Star Trek. Roasted potato recipe. So I've rarely ever attended a meal where roasted potatoes were not appropriate. Right? It's always potatoes. It depends on the culture. I suppose maybe he's a North American, a Canadian. There's a lot of potatoes in our traditional diet. However, you can take this recipe and sort of modify it depending on the needs. So if you chop your potatoes all nice in tiny cubes, it becomes a breakfast recipe. If you want to make them nice and big and chunky, that's great for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. Somewhere in the middle is a nice rough chop around 1.5 inches cubed or rough cube, just to make it appropriate for anything. Put them in a dish and leave them on the table and watch them disappear. So if you're having trouble figuring out what are 8 medium-sized potatoes, yeah, good question. So I think a medium-sized potato is around the size of your fist, okay? Depending on your fist, meat hooks. So if you really want to be accurate, I mean, it's not a science, guys. But let's talk about that for a second, using a scale. Okay, so I rarely do this, but I busted out the scale for you guys to show you that I've got 2 pounds and almost 14 ounces, so just shy of 3 pounds of potatoes. I probably have 1 medium-sized potato in there. I got all these sort of smallish other guys as well. I'm edging on almost 10 potatoes here. So what I've gathered from this experiment is that just to tip the scale until you get to just over 3 pounds. So I got 3 pounds and 1 ounce. So that to me is the right quantity of potatoes, okay? If you want to make it a science. But don't make it a science, guys. Okay, so according to science, the scale tells me that 3 pounds of potatoes is around the right amount. You can have a little bit less, a little bit more. Why is the quantity important? It's all about what you can fit on a baking sheet, all right? On a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper, if you've got a ton of potatoes and they're all crowded together, they don't roast as nicely. So the whole point here is 1 batch for this recipe is around 3 pounds of potatoes based on the size of the sheet that I'm going to be using. If you want to make more, then just figure out that it's that much per sheet and you can act accordingly. If you can fit 4 baking sheets in your oven, excellent. Okay, so speaking of ovens, you want to preheat to 425 degrees. So everything is about the details. How are you going to chop your potatoes? Are you going to peel them or not? It depends on what meal you're having this with. So for the purposes of this recipe, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the peel on and I'm going to cut them in a really large chunk, around 1.5 to 2 inch dice. And that's the size that I'm going to use. Keep in mind, the smaller they are, the more you're going to have to flip halfway through the process. So the bigger, the better. Cutting board, large bowl. So whether you've peeled them or not, cut up your potatoes and get them in the mixing bowl. Okay, so there you go, guys. I got my 3 pounds of potatoes cut up into roughly 1 to 1.5 inch size chunks. Perfect. Let's add some more stuff. Okay, so potatoes in the mixing bowl. Now you want to add your generous 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Doesn't have to be the good stuff, just your regular everyday extra virgin olive oil. Next, add the spice mixture. Okay, so either get a spoon or toss away. All right, so that's what you want, guys. You want every chunk of potato in your mixing bowl to have the same amount of coverage as all of its little neighbors. There you go. Next, you want to get yourself a standard size cookie sheet. Okay, so what I mean by standard size, 10 by 15 baking sheet just like this, and line it with a piece of parchment paper. All right, then dump your potatoes right on there. Okay, so as you can see, my 3 pounds of potatoes, they take up exactly the right amount of space on this baking sheet. That's why the quantity is important. All right, let's get these in the center rack. Put on a timer for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, go! So these potatoes, delicious. If I do say so myself. I've got a lot of people when they come over and they ask, oh, what's the recipe? How do you make these? Well, here's the video, finally. So it's posted on YouTube. One thing about when you're roasting these is each potato should be touching the bottom of the pan. You don't want to have them piled up on each other. So that's why the quantity is important. They got to brown evenly across all of them. This first 20-minute sort of session here is the halfway mark so that they brown on one side. When 20 minutes is expired, we're going to take these out and we're going to flip them over. Okay, 20 minutes up. Let's get these out and flip them around. Oh, that smells good. Okay, so they're not fully cooked, and man, they smell delicious. But you don't want to mess around doing this in the oven. Take them right out, close it up, and let your oven stay at 425. And take the time to flip these each over individually. All right, let's get a couple of forks or some tongs. I always prefer to use some forks. So it's worth investing a little bit of tedious flipping activity to notice that the bottom side that has been roasting for 20 minutes, look at that lovely browning. So that's what you want all around all of the potatoes. Okay, so once they're flipped, get them back in for another 20 minutes. Okay, back in they go. Center rack, another round, 20 minutes. So the more you make this recipe, the more you're going to remember, wow, the smaller my potatoes, the more flipping I have to do. So come Thanksgiving or Christmas, the sizes are going to be a little bit bigger. It's less to flip, and they're a lot easier. Plus, not to mention that a great big roasted potato, a lovely feature to have on a holiday meal. But when you're doing it just for a regular lunch or a barbecue, the smaller potatoes, a little more tedious, but certainly the more appropriate size. P.S. When I'm doing the breakfast potatoes, the little tiny cubes, I cut them up really small. I am not flipping each one. No way. I get the spatula out and I just flip them over like that. In a case like that, when you're doing the really tiny dice, it can take a little bit longer in the second batch and maybe even a third flip. So you just have to pay attention. For most of the other kind of cuts that you're using, 1 inch or larger, this is the method and the right recipe to follow. So I'm at this very awkward stage of the day. I've had my coffee. Zip. I've had my Perrier. I think it might be beer o'clock. Yeah, I don't mind if I do. Oh, Santé. Okay, 20 minutes part 2 is done. Let's take them out. Okay, so after 40 minutes in a 425 degree oven, these are definitely cooked. So nice and fork tender, and underneath, beautiful browning across all the board. If the center guys are brown, that means that they're all brown. Doesn't matter which one you pick up, they're all gonna have a nice little browning on there. All right, so there you have it, folks. A lovely batch of oven-roasted potatoes. Who doesn't like these, right? And these go along great with anything, whether it's lunch, supper, hey, even breakfast. My name is Paul from ImpulsiveCulinarian.com. I hope you liked this video, guys. And if you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I'll be sure to see you in the next one. Cheers. Wrap this up.